Hi, I'm John Hart. Welcome back to Mr. America Hart. All right, today we're talking about Mike Mentzer and how Mike trained me back in the early 90s. I was a client of his at one point and eventually became friends with him. We lived on the same block in Playa del Rey in Southern California. And man, at the time in the early 90s, I was training really hard with a good friend of mine, Steve Ballinger. You've heard me talk about Big Steve and some other videos. Hardest training partner I ever had. And this was the thing. We both became a little bit enamored with, well, Dorian Yates was Mr. Olympia at the time, from 1992, 93, all the way through 1997 and 98. Dorian was directly influenced by Mike Mentzer. Now, I had already started training in the very beginning on Mike Mentzer's heavy-duty training principles and system. And then when I trained with Steve, we were in the middle of a Dorian-esque type of training cycle, and Mike Mentzer was making a comeback in the magazines. He was, at that time, becoming really popular for having trained a few guys, getting them to grow new muscle, and this one-set training principle, this high-intensity training, heavy-duty system, he called it. And, this was the thing. I had a good business. I could afford to do it. I picked up the phone. I called up the phone number in an article that he wrote, and I asked him to train me. And he said yes. I met with him at Gold's Gym. And as a matter of fact, my training partner did the same, but separately. On his own, he trained with him as well. And the great part about this was, coming into it, Mike Mentzer had always been an idol of mine, okay? As a beginner, back when I was 17, 18 years old, as a trainee, beginning bodybuilder, competing as a teenager, competing as a teenager, it was pretty great. Mike, I had been exposed to him through the very first magazine that I ever saw, bodybuilding magazine, and that was the 1980 issue of Muscle Builder with Frank Zane and Christine Zane on the cover. And it was covering the Olympia that had just happened a few months earlier. Well, even though I could relate more to Frank Zane's body, it was the training that Mike Mentzer spoke about in his training articles that logically made so much sense to me. That was it. I was enamored with it. I was taken by it. I had to apply it to my training, and I did with myself and my brother. And I would drag him to the gym. My brother, an unwilling training partner at the time when we were both teenagers. And when we did go to the gym, we would use all the principles that Mike had going on in his first original heavy-duty courses. And I'll put some pictures on the screen for y'all. And I did those courses. I sent him some cash in an envelope, and he actually sent me the courses. And we followed those things, and it was great. I put on 20 pounds of muscle within the first year and a half, and it was awesome. I thought this was the best way to train. I had no idea everybody else was training like Arnold. I had no idea everybody else was doing this high volume, 6 days a week and 3 to 5 exercises, 3 to 5 sets per exercise. I had no idea. I just knew that Mike Mentzer made sense to me. Heavy-duty training made sense to me. So continuing on, eventually when I met Steve, the funny part about that is that we trained so hard that it automatically set us up to do very little work overall in the gym. We couldn't do high volume training whatsoever. And, more or less, we were defaulting on burning ourselves out in 1 or 2 sets. And it was those 2 sets that were so intense. After 2 sets of training to failure, just like Dorian, I mean, if you're going to train to absolute failure, you cannot take more than a couple of sets. But was it necessary? And that was the thing. We noticed that Dorian, in going from a 1-time Mr. Olympia to 2-time Mr. Olympia and making such great progress, enormous progress and wiping out the competition, that this was something we were interested in. So we went to the source, Mike Mentzer. And so I'm going to pare this all down simply to the 2 biggest questions I get regarding heavy-duty, high-intensity training. And the reason why I get these questions is because I handled all of the heavy-duty, high-intensity consultations after Mike died. And Joanne Sharkey, she had inherited everything Mike Mentzer, heavy-duty, and all of the copyrights and legal status for everything, okay? And she ended up hiring me from 2009 on to handle all the consultations. I was a student of Mike. I was very successful in what I was doing, training clients as well as competing. but in natural bodybuilding. So that was it. You know, I won the natural versions of the same titles that Mike had won. I won the natural Mr. Universe in my height class, and then I won the actual Mr. America in 2013. So continuing on in training, all I did was adapt the training principles to my level of where I was at. And that's what I do with clients as well. So what was it about heavy duty training? Here we go. The two big questions that I get. Number one is, well, can't I just do a push-pull legs in 1 week and train everything all at once? And I grabbed this book right now. This is Heavy Duty 1, okay, Mike's original heavy duty book. It's called Heavy Duty 1, and it has a push-pull legs workout in it. And it's a great workout, and it does work for quite a while. The problem with it, though, is that Mike found out, and so did I, is that the upper body muscles tend to stop responding. The legs will continue to respond really well on once-a-week workouts, but the upper body starts to flail. It starts to bring diminishing returns, and no longer are the muscles progressing. It's because there's too much overlapping. Okay, it's impossible not to have overlapping. For a better discussion on overlapping and how it's hard to train your upper body properly and know how to train it properly, I refer you to Heavy Duty 2, Mind and Body, Mike's second heavy duty book. This one is the one that, and you see all Mike, this is my personal copy, you see my own notes in it. Mike wrote Heavy Duty 2 specifically with the idea of avoiding overlapping, and that routine was the one that he ran on Steve and myself. When I went in there and I did that Heavy Duty 2 routine, it's called the ideal routine, and I'll give you an idea of what it looks like on the screen. That routine, I ran with it for 4 or 5 years after that and did all the proper adjustments along the way as I progressed. That's a lesson all in itself. I'll have to do some videos on that as well. However, for now, just know this. The two biggest questions that I get about heavy-duty, high-intensity training, I'm going to give those to you. The first question is, well, how do I warm up for these workouts? Okay, I'll tell you the way Mike told me to warm up, and the way he trained me to warm up in the gym at Gold's Gym. And it was, we did whatever it took to be warm and have a feeling of, I'm ready to go. And usually what that meant was, excuse me, the first compound movement of the day, we focus on that. So if it was squats, we would warm up on squats. A set with 50%, a set with 75%. And I mean a set of just 5 or 6 reps, even though I could do 30, or even though I could do 15. I would just do 5, maybe 3, just to feel warmed up. Let my knees, joints, ankles, everything get warmed up. Blood flow, all of that, ready to go for safety reasons, right? If I was doing chest that day, whatever my pressing motion was, I'd warm up on that, and I'd be ready to go on everything else. From that point on, my triceps are warmed up, everything's warmed up. So that's it. Simple. Whatever it took to warm up. Don't get hung up on the fact that those are sets, okay? That's where we get into a semantics game. That's ridiculous. There's a huge difference between doing, a set with 50% for 8 reps, a set with 75% for 5 reps, and you're nowhere near working weight, and you go ahead and you're now ready to work out. You don't count that as having done 2 sets, as opposed to some of the other scientists these days. They believe in doing not to failure sets with your working weight. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, totally different animal. 1 working set of everything from that point on, and you're gone. You're going. That's it. And so there were 2 questions I said. The number 1 was, how do I warm up? So I just told you. And then number 2 is, well, what about push-pull legs? Why can't I do that? I just explained that one already in telling you how Mike evolved from push-pull legs to the ideal routine. There's too much overlapping in the push-pull legs. Too much overlapping. So that's it. All right. So I have more videos coming up on Mike Mentzer, high intensity, heavy duty training. It's coming up. And for now, from my heart to you, John Hart, I look forward to seeing you next time.